I trusted my sister with everything, more than anyone in the world. And that was my biggest mistake. It started like a normal week. Nothing felt unusual. Family calls, work pressure, and my small business running like always. I had built it from nothing. Slowly, year by year. Late nights, early mornings, and endless sacrifices. My sister Paige used to admire it. At least, I thought she did. She would say things like, "I wish I had your life, Chelsea. I wish I could do what you do." I always smiled, because she was my sister, and I believed her. But everything changed on a Saturday morning. I opened my banking app, just like I always did. I expected normal numbers, bills, expenses, maybe some income. But instead, I froze. My breath stopped. My heart dropped. $47,000 was gone. I stared at the screen. Again. And again. It didn't change. Then I saw something worse. 3 transactions. All on the same day. All within minutes. And the note beside them. Approved device, Chelsea's tablet. I whispered to myself, "No, this is not possible." Because I was in the barn that day. I remember it clearly. I was treating one of my horses. No one had access to my device. No one, except one person. Garrett, my brother-in-law. That evening, I didn't say anything. I waited. I needed proof. Not emotions. Proof. So I checked everything. Bank logs. Device history. Login records. And what I found made my hands shake. The login came from my farm store tablet. The same tablet I had left on the counter during the family reunion, while I was inside the barn. For exactly 8 minutes. 8 minutes was all it took. I sat down slowly, my mind refusing to accept it. Then I heard a memory. Garrett's voice. "Let me just watch the register, Chelsea." That sentence suddenly felt different. Dangerous. The next morning, I called the bank. The manager confirmed everything. "Yes, the transfers were authorized from your device." I said, "I was not there." She replied, "Then someone used your login session." That was the moment I understood. This was not random. This was planned. I drove to Ruth, my accountant. I showed her everything. She didn't speak for a few seconds. Then she said one line. "This isn't theft without planning. This is coordinated." My stomach turned. Coordinated. That word changed everything. Because now it wasn't just Garrett. It was more than that. It was family. That night, I went to my sister Paige. She was in her kitchen. Acting normal. Too normal. I placed the bank printouts on the table. She looked at them. And I saw it. Just for a second. Fear. Then denial. Then anger. What is this supposed to be? I said nothing. Just watched her. Then I said, "Explain it." Silence. Long silence. Then she spoke softly. "You don't understand what we're going through." We. Not him. We. That was the moment everything broke. Because she wasn't surprised. She wasn't confused. She was involved. I stepped back. My voice lowered. "You knew." She didn't answer. That was the answer. My chest felt heavy. Not anger. Something deeper. Betrayal. The kind that doesn't explode. It collapses inside you. Slowly. I walked out of her house without another word. But the real shock came 2 days later. Ruth called me. Her voice was different. Sharp. Focused. "Chelsea, you need to sit down." She paused. Then said, "I found where the money went." My grip tightened. "Tell me." She exhaled. 2 accounts. One is Garrett's. And the second is a joint account. I froze. Joint. Yes. She continued. Paige's name is on it. The room went silent. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe properly. Because now it wasn't just theft. It was planning. It was trust broken at the deepest level. Everything clicked. The reunion. The questions. The tablet. The timing. They didn't take money. They studied my system first. I sat in my barn that night, surrounded by the only beings that never lied to me. My horses. Juniper pressed her head against my shoulder, like she always did when something was wrong. And for the first time, I didn't feel sadness. I felt clarity, because now I knew something important. This wasn't just about money. It was about control, about entitlement, about people who think kindness is weakness. 3 weeks later, the police report was filed. Evidence was submitted. Bank logs, device history, witness statement, everything. And when the sheriff looked at me, he said something I will never forget. You didn't guess this. You proved it. That was the difference. A few days later, Paige came to my ranch. Alone. No esmail. No excuses. Just silence. She stood there for a long time. Then she said softly, "Do you really want to destroy our family?" I looked at her. And for the first time, I didn't hesitate. You already did that. Then I closed the door. Not out of anger, but out of truth. Because family is not what you share by blood. It is what you protect with honesty. And they had broken both. I thought the worst part was finding the money gone. I was wrong. The worst part was finding out who was behind it. Because money can be stolen. But trust? Once it breaks, it never goes back the same. The next morning after I confronted Paige, I couldn't sit still. My mind kept replaying her face. Not confusion. Not shock. But recognition. She knew. And that meant this wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. I drove to Ruth's office again. This time I didn't even sit down properly. I just said, "Show me everything." Ruth opened her laptop. Her expression was serious now. Different from before. More final. She turned the screen toward me. Jealousy. I went deeper. I stayed quiet. Waiting. She clicked once. Then said, "The money didn't just go to Garrett." My stomach tightened. It was split. She pointed at the screen. 18,000 to Garrett's personal account. 14,000 to an online gambling platform. My jaw clenched. And the rest? Ruth paused. This was the moment I felt something shift. The remaining 15,000. She looked at me. Went into a joint account. I already knew what she was going to say. But I still asked. Whose account? Ruth didn't hesitate. Garrett and Paige. Silence. Heavy silence. The kind that presses on your chest. I leaned back slowly. My hands went cold. So it wasn't just access. It wasn't just opportunity. It was structure. A plan with 2 names on it. I whispered. So she didn't just know. Ruth nodded. She participated. That word hit harder than anything else. Participated. Not victim. Not unaware. Involved. I closed my eyes for a second, trying to hold myself together. Then I asked, "Can we prove it?" Ruth slid another paper forward. Bank metadata. Device logs. Login timestamps. And one line circled in red. Session approved from secondary device. Paige Hollis login sync. My breath stopped. She logged in. I asked. Ruth nodded. At least once. I felt something inside me go completely still. Not anger. Not sadness. Something colder. Clarity. Because now it wasn't a suspicion anymore. It was documented. I stood up. Slowly. Print everything. Ruth looked at me carefully. You're really doing this? I answered without hesitation. She chose this the moment she touched my account. That afternoon, I met Deputy Earl Beckett again. This time, I wasn't emotional. I was prepared. I laid everything on the table. Bank logs, joint account records, device authorization proof, Ruth's forensic summary. He didn't interrupt once. Not even a word. Just read, page by page. When he finished, he leaned back and said quietly, "This is no longer a family issue. This is a criminal case." Those words changed everything. Because once law enforcement steps in, emotions don't matter anymore. Evidence does. I went home that evening and walked straight into the barn. The only place that still felt honest. Juniper was waiting at the gate. As always. I leaned against her neck. And for the first time in days, I exhaled. Because I wasn't lost anymore. I knew exactly what I had to do. But what I didn't know yet was how far they had gone to cover their tracks. And the next discovery would destroy whatever was left of my family. I thought I already knew the truth. I didn't. Not even close. Because betrayal doesn't arrive all at once. It arrives in layers. Slow. Quiet. Until you can't ignore it anymore. That evening, I was clearing out a storage shed behind my farm store. Trying to stay busy. Trying not to think. Old tools. Empty feed bugs. Broken equipment. Things I should have thrown away months ago. That's when I saw it. A denim jacket. Pages. Still hanging on a nail. She must have forgotten it during the reunion. I almost left it there. But something made me stop. I checked the pockets. Left pocket, nothing. Right pocket, something folded. Paper. I unfolded it slowly. And my stomach dropped. It was a screenshot. My banking app. My business account. Balance. $50,847.23. The exact amount I had on the morning of the theft. My hands started shaking instantly. Because I knew what this meant. This wasn't random. This wasn't guesswork. This was surveillance. And at the bottom of the page, a handwritten note. Paige's handwriting. I would recognize it anywhere. 2 words. Enough. G says yes. I stood there completely still. The shed felt smaller. Colder. Like the air had changed. I whispered. What did you do? That moment changed everything. Because now I understood something terrifying. They didn't just take money. They planned it. They checked the exact balance first. They confirmed it was worth it. Then they executed it. Like a transaction. Not a crime. A decision. I drove straight to Ruth. Didn't call. Didn't wait. Just drove. When I arrived, I handed her the paper. She read it once. Then again. Her face changed immediately. This is coordination, she said quietly. I nodded. I know. She opened her laptop again. This time faster. More urgent. Within minutes, she pulled another report. And her voice dropped. Chelsea, there's more. I leaned forward. What now? She turned the screen. This isn't the first time Garrett has moved money like this. My heart tightened. What do you mean? She clicked through transaction history. Older dates. Smaller amounts at first. $500. $1,200. $2,000. Then growing. Always after family events. Always when access was possible. My voice lowered. How long has this been going on? Ruth didn't look up. Months. Silence. Heavy silence. Because now it wasn't a single betrayal. It was a pattern. A system. A habit. They had tested it before. And I never saw it. Because I trusted them. I stood up slowly. My hands were shaking again. But not from fear. From realization. They had been inside my life longer than I thought. Watching. Learning. Waiting. I drove home that night in silence. No music. No phone. Just thoughts I couldn't control anymore. When I reached the ranch, everything felt different. Even the barn felt quieter. Like it knew something had changed. Juniper came to me first. As always. I leaned my forehead against her neck. And whispered. I missed it, didn't I? Because I had. All of it. The signs. The timing. The pattern. The trust. Everything I ignored now made sense. And that's what hurt the most. Not the money. Not even the betrayal. But the fact that I let it happen. The next morning, I called Deputy Beckett. I have new evidence, I said. There was a pause. Then he replied. Bring it in. When I arrived, I laid everything out. The screenshot. The handwritten note. Ruth's expanded logs. He studied it carefully. Then leaned back. This connects intent, he said. I asked quietly. What does that mean? He looked at me. It means this wasn't spontaneous. It was planned in advance. Those words settled in the room like stone. Planned. Advance. Intent. That was the difference between a mistake and a crime. That evening, I got a call I didn't expect. Paige. Her voice was shaking. Chelsea, we need to talk. I closed my eyes. Because I already knew what was coming. But I still said, talk. She paused. Then said something I will never forget. Garrett says you're going to ruin us. I laughed once. Not because it was funny. Because it was unbelievable. I didn't ruin anything, I said. You did. Silence. Then her voice cracked. You don't understand what he's capable of. That was the first time I felt something new. Not fear. Warning. Because people don't say that unless they're afraid of something bigger. Something I hadn't seen yet. And in that moment, I realized the story wasn't over. Not even close. Paige's last words stayed in my head. You don't understand what he's capable of. I used to think she meant me. That I was the problem. That I was too strict. Too sensitive. Too emotional about money. But now I understood something else. She wasn't warning me about me. She was warning me about him. And that changed everything. The next morning, I didn't wait. I went straight to Deputy Beckett. This time, I didn't bring emotions. I brought everything. Every file. Every log. Every screenshot. Every transaction. I placed the folder on the table. It was thick now. Heavy. Like it had weight beyond paper. Beckett opened it slowly. He didn't rush. He read like a man building a case in his mind. After a long silence, he finally spoke. This is enough for charges. I asked quietly. Against who? He looked at me. Both of them. The room went still. Both. Not just Garrett. Page 2. That word hit differently. Because hearing it is one thing. Accepting it is another. I nodded slowly. Then proceed. He studied me for a second. You sure? I didn't hesitate. They already chose this. That was the truth. Not anger. Not revenge. Just acceptance. The case moved fast after that. Too fast for a normal family situation. Bank security flagged the pattern. The joint account flagged suspicious withdrawals. The gambling transfers matched identity verification logs. Everything connected. Like a chain. Each piece pulling the next down. Then came the call I didn't expect. From the bank investigator. Miss Acton, she said, we found something additional. My stomach tightened. What is it? A pause. Then, the login session used during the transfer was duplicated. I frowned. Duplicated? Yes, she said. One device inside your ranch network, and one remote sync session from another location. My grip tightened. Where? She hesitated, then answered. Your sister's home. Silence. That was the moment everything turned final. Because now it wasn't just access. It wasn't just opportunity. It was coordination in real time. I closed my eyes. So she was there, watching it happen. Or worse, guiding it. I hung up the call and just sat there for a long time. No anger. No tears. Just stillness. Because something inside me had already accepted it. The sister I grew up with was gone. That evening, Paige came to my ranch. I saw her car before she even stepped out. She didn't bring Garrett. This time she came alone. She looked exhausted, like someone who hadn't slept in days. She stopped at the barn entrance. Didn't come closer. Chelsea, she said softly. I didn't answer immediately. I just looked at her. Waiting. She swallowed hard. He's saying we should take a deal. I nodded slowly. Good. Her eyes widened. Good. I stepped forward. For once, he's right about something. She shook her head. You're really going to send him to jail? I looked at her directly. No. A pause. Her face changed. Confused. Hopeful. Then I finished the sentence. I'm sending the evidence to the prosecutor. Silence. That was worse. Because now it wasn't personal anymore. It was official. She whispered. You're choosing them over family. I shook my head. No, paige. I'm choosing truth over lies. Her eyes filled. And for a moment she looked like my sister again. The one I used to know. But then she said the final thing. If you do this, there's no going back. I answered quietly. There never was. She stood there for a few seconds. Then she left. No guvie. No argument. Just silence. That night, I walked through my barn alone. Every horse sleeping. Every stall quiet. Juniper came to me last. As always, I rested my hand on her neck. And for the first time, I felt peace. Not because everything was fixed, but because everything was finally clear. 2 weeks later, the case was officially forwarded. Charges filed. Evidence accepted. Bank records locked. And for the first time in months, I wasn't guessing anymore. I was waiting. Because truth doesn't need noise. It only needs time. And time had finally caught up. The waiting is always the hardest part. Not the betrayal. Not the discovery. But the silence after everything is already in motion. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. No calls. No confrontación. No new explanations. Just the slow, unbearable normality of life continuing. While something bigger was already moving underneath it. Then the sheriff called. Chelsea, Deputy Beckett said. You should come in. His voice wasn't urgent. But it wasn't casual either. That middle tone. That's the one you never ignore. When I arrived, the evidence room looked the same. But the energy didn't. Beckett placed a new file on the table. This came in from the Financial Crimes Unit, he said. I opened it. And froze. Inside were expanded logs from the bank. Deeper than anything Ruth had pulled. And one line stood out. Remote access session authenticated using secondary household device linked to Paige Hollis. I looked up slowly. So it's confirmed, I said. He nodded. Yes. Then he added something that changed the entire case. There's more. My stomach tightened. He slid another page forward. A recovery trace report. Some of the stolen funds were moved again after withdrawal, he said. I frowned. Moved where? Beckett looked at me directly. To cover debts. A pause. High-risk gambling losses. Multiple creditors. One unregistered loan network. I leaned back slowly. So he was already in debt. Beckett nodded. Deep. That explained the speed. The panic. The overconfidence. People don't steal calmly when they're stable. They steal when they're drowning. But what shocked me wasn't Garrett anymore. It was Paige. Because drowning people don't act alone. They pull others down with them. That evening, I sat in my barn longer than usual. No paperwork. No phone. Just silence. Juniper stood beside me. Breathing slow. Grounded. Real. I rested my hand on her neck and finally said it out loud. They planned it. Not a question. A truth I had avoided saying fully until now. And once I said it, something inside me settled. Not peace. Clarity. The next morning I got the call. The prosecutor's office. Miss Acton, the woman said, we've reviewed all submitted evidence. I held my breath. There was a pause. Then she continued. Charges are being formally filed. I closed my eyes. Not in relief. Not in victory. Just acceptance. Because once the system speaks, everything becomes final. Later that day, Paige texted me. Only 3 words. You really did it. I stared at the message for a long time. My fingers didn't move. Then I replied. No, you did. I turned my phone off after that. Not because I was avoiding her, but because there was nothing left to argue. Weeks passed. Then the hearing date was set. Garrett was charged with unauthorized financial access, fraud, and structured transfers. Paige with conspiracy and facilitation. The words sounded heavy, but they were just labels for something simple. Choices. The morning of the hearing, I stood outside the courthouse for a long time. Cold air. Gray sky. Same feeling as the day I found the first missing money. But this time, I didn't feel lost. I felt finished. Not because everything was healed, but because everything was finally visible. Inside the courtroom, I didn't look at them at first. I couldn't. Not out of fear. Out of finality. But when I finally did, Paige was already looking at me. And for a second, she looked like she wanted to say something. Anything. But nothing came. Because some damage doesn't translate into words anymore. It only translates into consequences. The judge read the charges. The evidence was acknowledged. The case proceeded. And I sat there thinking about something simple. 8 minutes. That's all it took to change my entire life. Not the theft. Not the money. But the trust they used to open the door. After the hearing, I walked out alone. No celebration. No satisfaction. Just air. Real air. Outside the courthouse steps, Deputy Beckett stood beside me. You did the right thing, he said. I looked ahead. I didn't do it for right or wrong. He raised an eyebrow. Then why? I finally answered honestly. Because if I didn't, I would have lost everything twice. A pause. He nodded slowly. Fair answer. That evening, I returned to my ranch. The horses were calm. Like nothing in the world had changed. But I had. Juniper walked up to me first, as always. I leaned into her neck and whispered, "It's over." And for the first time in months, I believed it. Not because life was perfect again, but because the truth no longer needed chasing. It had already arrived. And sometimes, that's all closure really is. People think justice feels like relief. Like fireworks. Like a moment where everything suddenly becomes okay again. But that's not how it felt. Not for me. Justice felt quiet, like standing in a barn after a storm has passed. Everything's still there, but changed. Permanently. The court process didn't end overnight. Nothing like this ever does. There were hearings, statements, evidence reviews, delays, and long days where I had to keep running my ranch like nothing inside me was breaking. Because life doesn't pause for betrayal, especially when animals depend on you. The first real shift came when the plea agreement was discussed. Garrett agreed to financial restitution terms. Paige didn't speak much in court after that. She just sat there, still, like she was trying to disappear inside herself. I didn't feel victory when I heard it. I didn't feel revenge. I just felt distance. As if everything that happened belonged to someone else's life now. Not mine. A life I had already survived. Not when I was still inside. Weeks later, the first repayment transfer hit my account. It wasn't the full amount. Not even close. But it wasn't about the number anymore. It was about acknowledgement. That it happened. That it was real. That it wasn't my imagination. I remember sitting at my desk when I saw it. No reaction. No tears. Just a long exhale. Like my body had been holding its breath for months, and finally forgot how to keep doing it. That evening, I walked the barn slowly. One stall at a time. Checking water. Feed. Locks. Normal things. But everything felt different now. Not broken. Just understood. Juniper was waiting at her stall door. She always was. I leaned my forehead against her neck. And for the first time, I didn't replay anything. No court scenes. No bank screens. No arguments. Just silence. And presence. A few days later, I got a letter. Not from the court. From Paige. No envelope de kerasjen. No emotion el build-up. Just paper. Folded once. Inside a few lines. Not excuses. Not explanations. Just words. I know saying sorry doesn't fix anything. But I need you to know I didn't see it clearly until it was too late. You were right about everything I refused to understand. I hope one day you don't hate me as much as I hate myself right now. I read it twice. Then I folded it back carefully and placed it in the same folder as everything else. Not because it healed anything, but because it belonged there. Part of the record. Part of the truth. Weeks turned into months. The ranch stabilized again. Slowly. Carefully. Like rebuilding after fire. Fewer luxuries. Stricter decisions. But still alive. Still mine. One morning, Miguel asked me something casually while fixing a fence post. You ever think about leaving all this behind? I looked out at the horses for a long moment, then answered honestly, no, because this place didn't just survive what happened. It proved something. He didn't ask what. He didn't need to. We both already knew. Later that day, I stood at the edge of the pasture. Wind moving through the grass. Sunlight over the barn roof. Everything the same. And completely different. I thought about trust. About family. About how easily both can be rewritten by people you never expect. But I also thought about something else. Strength. Not the loud kind. Not the revenge kind. The quiet kind. The kind that wakes up every morning anyway. Feeds what depends on it. And keeps going. No matter what was taken. Juniper walked up beside me and bumped her head lightly into my arm. I smiled for the first time without thinking about anything else. And whispered, "We're okay now." Not because the past disappeared, but because it no longer owned the future.